Welcome back to Let's Talk Race Somalia. I'm your host, Harrison Paul, and today we're going to speak about Erik Prince. This guy is so foolish. Today I'm so angry, but I'm happy. I'm torn at the moment because I understand that finally Africans worldwide are finally talking and speaking and discussing the topic of the genocide that's taking place in Congo, and we are making it clear that we are tired of this. I'm happy. I'm looking forward to when we begin to, majority of the bigger platforms like such as Shadeborough, who made a false kind of post quite recently, which perpetuates the whole narrative that enables people like, the imperialists, because they blamed, they blamed Rwanda for everything, which really is the whole point of why we're in this damage, is because they can get away with murder. And I just looking forward to when people learn the topic a little bit deeper and understand the true enemy and have a little bit more information than what is just surface based. But nonetheless, I'm happy to see us speaking about the topic, and I look forward as we move forward. But I want to show a video first that's going to let you know exactly why I'm happy. I seen this video and it just made me so happy. I'm gonna play it now for you guys to hear it, but this video made me so happy. Let's watch it.
Non à l'impérialisme américain. Ceci est le néocolonialisme. Il manipule les Rwandais. Les Rwandais n'ont pas des industries. Ces minéraux vont vers les États-Unis d'Amérique. Les Rwandais sont instrumentalisés. Nos vrais ennemis sont les Américains que vous voyez. Ce sont eux qui manipulent les Rwandais. On dit non à l'impérialisme américain, non au néocolonialisme américain. C'est la raison d'être que nous sommes ici. Nous revendiquons non au néocolonialisme. Nous défendons l'indépendance intégrale de notre pays. L'indépendance vive, la véritable indépendance que nos pères ont défendue, que le monde a défendu ce pays. La jeunesse panafricaine se lève aujourd'hui. Non aux manigances américaines, non à l'impérialisme américain.
This is what I fight for. You know, when I kept talking about vigilantes and revolutionaries, you see in his eyes, do you see how he says what our forefathers fought for? Guys, if there's one thing I learned about Caucasians and Westerners, they fight on the premise of what their forefathers fought for. They have now disguised it with this inclusivity movement because they feel the peer pressure that comes with it, because a lot of black people are tied up with their businesses and tied up with their earnings and their profits. It's harder for them to be. If they benefited nothing from black people, I'm telling you today, we would still be where their forefathers wished they would still be. Their forefathers never wished that there would be people who are sharing a society and sharing wealth and moving towards sharing more wealth with Africans. It is merely because the children of their forefathers have now been met with us. But I'm going to get into this topic in a huge way, and it's just like so much to unpack here. But that is what that passion that guy talks about is what I'm so excited to see in African today. We don't have this. This is the reason. You keep thinking that it's our leaders. You keep thinking that it's because we're not educated. You keep thinking it's because schooling, because nothing. It won't take schooling to know who the enemy is, because they're not even teaching you that in school. The reason Africa is in its state that it is today is because we don't know who the enemy is. And the damage that colonialism had on the mind of the African, a colonized mind, it caused him to hate himself. That does not manifest himself as blatantly as you think self-hate does. And I'll be trying to explain this to people. God help me explain it today. Self-hate and internalized oppression is that lack of patience we have for the next brother. This is why I do a whole page that is dedicated to psychology. How the black person's consciousness can elevate. Because without an elevation of consciousness, there is no revolution. I don't care how many books you've read. I don't care how much education you have. I don't care if you have a doctorate in anything. You just become an Uncle Tom doctor. And that is what we've had for all these generations. We have people who don't understand the topic thoroughly because all of our ancestors and our forefathers, our aunties and uncles were scared and frightened out of pointing out the real culprit or perpetrator, culprit. They were scared out of that. I'm trying to tell you, when you go on the journey of becoming a Pan-Africanist and an activist or whatever I do, the psychology of the African is something you learn to understand from the very first video I made. And you understand after that journey, what is the African's problem? It's far from education. When I do this movement that I do, and I watch how afraid we are, and I watch how the African will touch every other topic than touch the real perpetrator. I've had loved ones who fought with me, and I get the sense that there's this, they did this experiment. I don't know if it's an old tale or if it's a real experiment. And there was a monkey. There was a bunch of monkeys trying to get, I think it was an orange from an orange tree. But every time they would try to knock the tree to take down oranges, water would splash these monkeys. Bunch of water. Hear me. Now, in either one of them old tales or is either one of the, a real experiment. And there was a bunch of them. So every time they would introduce a new monkey, that monkey, out of instinct, would go for the orange. And they would beat up that new monkey every time they introduced a new monkey into this group. Because they understood trying to reach for that brings something we don't like. Follow me, brothers and sisters. So now there's an instinctual instinct in the Africans. Don't challenge master. Find everything else you can do but challenge master. Because it's written in our subconscious mind. So you will actually make an African, like the monkeys, angry. That is, quote unquote, naive enough to say, let's fight. I watched a video recently. I have to get it up today. I watched a video recently. All right? A friend sent it to me. And I want to put up on the screen because you guys got to watch this. It's just a perfect example. Then after that, we'll get to Erik Prince. But let's watch this video.
Protesting for equal rights. You have the right to be a doctor. You have the right to be a lawyer. Black Lives Matter. I'll protest like a fatherless idiot, like a jobless chimpanzee. Because America doesn't have enough jobless idiots. You want to become one of them. America's senior brother, Mahatma Gandhi. Look at you protesting now. Important. You have the right to. You don't have the right to be an idiot. And my brother is good. Mr. Police Officer, how can I help you?
I'm Officer Mark, who is starting to disturb this from the neighbors. Our neighbors said they can hear a child screaming. What seems to be the issue?
Disturb us. It's my useless son. You better arrest him because he's a hoodlum, a criminal. That's what he is. My brother, discipline him. Officer, help me. I'm being abused. I'm a victim.
So, the African. This is the African. Why do I think and look at the African Americans so much? Because they've been fighting that fight at the oppressor so much. You know, I recently did a video, and there's an African American lady. I spoke to her. I said, you know what? In many ways, I'm not upset about the imperialist. He does this thing. Then I said, I'm mad at my people who can't seem to see that he, is the perpetrator. Who will make so much spend hours with people arguing online about African leaders, not understanding the real perpetrator behind that, which is what that Congolese boy was saying. If anybody understands French, which is what he was saying. I'm tired of us in this fighting against ourselves, against the puppet, as he sits somewhere far when he's threatened the life of the Rwandan leader. If you think we are not dealing with mafia, Africa, we are dealing with the mafia of mafia. You ask yourself the question. I was saying this to my girl. I was saying, think of movie, guys. Think of a movie. Think of someone like now Netanyahu. Think of how ruthless he is. If he's benefiting off your natural resources, think of him making a phone call to a Rwanda leader. How are you? You wouldn't want anything to happen to your sisters and your mother, would you? I reenacted that for her in a more way, but think of that smooth business mafia way. Hey, did my money come through? Or did you drop them diamonds off? Or here's a deal. Sign it. And you guys say, he's greedy. Greed? A greedy man would say, nah, brother. I want my whole 5 billion for each one of those minerals. If you knew Africa was getting everything, even that leader, that's not greed. He's taking this petty 3 Judas. Was Judas greedy? Was it really Judas' greed? Maybe I'm just thinking about the movie that was done. But they threw Judas his pennies. The real perpetrators were the ones who crucified Christ. It was pennies. Take your pennies. Take your pennies. I think I'm more going off the movie that I watched on the Christ. It was more the peer pressure he felt by the people he was approached by. These African leaders take pennies. The real fear comes in. If I want to be Mr. African leader and start a revolution, I wouldn't even be able to trust if my driver, the next time I have to do an outing, wouldn't crash the car to kill me. You don't know who you're playing with. We watch people kill off Princess Diana in our public opinion like it was nothing. Who do you think you're playing with? They've trained your whole army. Who do you think you're playing with? This African American woman, because I just made that phrase I was trying to be witty in how I spoke. The enemy gonna be the enemy. We need to identify the enemy. She checked me. There you go, blaming the perpetrator. And in that, blaming the victim instead of perpetrator. And in that moment, I remembered, because I've understood this for some time, why these Americans are getting what they want. You want to know why? The whole world, they have defamed the African American across the whole world? Because those guys know how to put pressure. And she told me, I told her, no, I was in the conversation, no. You see, I was actually saying that. And I like that. She said, don't take your eyes off the perpetrator. Don't even word it differently. Over here, we don't take our eyes off the enemy for a second. The African is still, and anybody who's in the African diaspora is still in a state of self-loathing and self-blame. Spoke to an African recently, and when you talk to an African, I've known this from being an activist, they'll give you 110 different reasons why it's our fault. That's why it's so silly that I'll talk to another African brother and say, we just need to learn how to be accountable. Africans are probably the most accountable people I've ever met. An African person, like African, Nigerian, Congolese, Senegalese, all the time, will blame himself or his people 100 times before he blames a white person. Because that's where he's been engraved. This mentality here, someone said in the comments, because we understand abject poverty with no human rights in our native land. So when we come to America, we don't take things for granted. Look at the slave mentality. Look at the slave mentality. You know, I was recently watching a Matt Walsh, Mac Politics. I was recently watching how he was insulting Jay-Z for standing up and making a statement saying, "Your billions of dollars, you're ungrateful." That just shows an underachiever's mentality, which the African has. Do you think Beyonce got to where she is? You think Jay-Z got to where she is for being grateful? They got to where they are for wanting more every time. That's exactly. They got to where they are because she went to bed one night with her first Grammy and woke up the next morning and was fighting her stomach to try not to forget about it. That's what greatness does. Michael Jackson went to bed on his first night of an armful of Grammys and thought, I think I have to go again. And it wasn't just, I would like another Grammy. It was a desire. And you can hear it in the music and in the product. You follow me? So this is the mentality. So for you to say, be grateful, when they have worked their butts off, danced long nights in the dance studio, from a young age, her father, I read this on a biography, would make her jog and sing at the same time to get her diaphragm and everything right so she could perform and everything. From a young age. And you think after those years of working, she's going to sit back and fold her arms and say, I should be grateful with that Grammy. When more nights, when we were enjoying our teens, she was going hard right until her older age. That's a loser mentality. And that's the mentality the white man wants us to have. And here is the African reiterating that mentality. So check this out. Then, of course, my favorite, the African Americans. Right? Of course, white people, check this out. I've been called racist for stating that I like the black Americans that immigrate here, but I hate the black Americans that live here. You really summed up why. They want you to be in a box, Negro. Watch where I'm going with this. Check this out. Check this out. Yo, don't know where it's coming up. The comment doesn't seem to be coming up. The comment doesn't seem to be coming up. I don't know where it's gone, brothers. But a brother commented here, and I can't find it. But basically what he said, you are negating and nullifying all that your forefathers fought for you to have in this very day and age. People died on the front line for you not to compromise it in 2024. This is what the African diaspora do not understand. This slave mentality of gratitude. Do you see any of the people around you right now in Ireland talking about be grateful? Themselves, do you see them holding that for their own selves, that standard? Oh, be grateful. We're upset about immigrants, but let's be grateful. If there's one thing I understand why Europeans are ahead of us, it's because they were not broken psychologically. That racial self-determination and self-esteem is what is the African's Achilles. It's not education, brothers and sisters. I know so many educated Uncle Ruckuses, Uncle Toms. They have nothing to offer to the community because their perception of the community is the very thing that's poisoned us. Check this out, check this out, check this out, check this out, check this out. I'm going to bring this to you today. I'm going to bring this to you today. I'm going to bring this to you today. So let's move over to our boy, Erik Prince. And I want you to listen to what he said. Check this out.
All this all this talk of illegal migration in Europe, in the United States, it ultimately comes down to a contest of what is governance. Who is governed? Which countries are governed well? And if so many of these countries around the world are incapable of governing themselves, then it's time for us to put the imperial hat back on to say, we're going to govern those countries if you're incapable of governing yourselves, because enough is enough. We're done being invaded.
Because our own national security risk is at stake.
Exactly.
National security interests are at stake.
You can say that about pretty much all of Africa. They're incapable of governing themselves and benefiting their citizens because the governments there are all about looting and pillaging and lining their pockets and going shopping in Paris instead of actually making their country better.
People on the left are going to watch this. They're going to say, wait a minute, Erik Prince is talking about being a colonialist again.
Absolutely. Yes. Enough. Because if you go to these countries and you see how they suffer under absolutely corrupt, made-up governments that are just criminal syndicates, the people of Africa, the people of Latin America, a lot of them deserve better.
Do you see the mentality of this, brothers and sisters? Let's talk about the courage. Where does the courage come from? It comes from a people that know. He knows I can play with these people. He could say like that and still walk the streets of Congo and never have to face the words he ate. He could say words like this and still shake hands with the leader of an African leader. Psychologically, we are broken. And I'm going to play this last tape that's going to help me tie in everything. And you're going to hear what I'm really talking about here today. Check this out.
But here's the point. If you're a white guy, especially, and even if you're a black guy, but from the West, if you're from the West, it's easy for you to insert yourself into the highest reaches of African society. Because in Africa, automatically, by being American or European, you will be taken more seriously. People will take you more seriously, the African people will take you more seriously, and you will be at a automatically higher echelon just because of where you come from. Now, of course, in business, it's all about who you know. It's all about what social circles you move in, all right? And this is something that people don't like.
Do you hear that? Guys, if you want to stop the genocide in Congo, African people worldwide have to understand. Do you see the energy of that boy I played in the beginning of the video? This is not what Lumumba fought for. For as long as we have forgotten what Lumumba fought for, we will always be people who can be walked over by that, like people like Erik Prince. It is not because we are not intelligent people. We do not have a backbone. Do you think that if the population of Africa felt like that boy, I don't care if it was different variations. I don't care if it was different variations. Not everyone has to articulate like him, but every person deep in their soul, the same way every person deep in the Irish soul, no, we're not going to let the British walk on us again. Whether it's a granny, whether it's a granda, whether it's an auntie, whether it's an uncle, whether it's a mother, a young mom, it's engraved in the Irish person from young to old that we're not going back there again. And I can bet you at any hint of, let's say, a British person having a nose up at an Irish person, it will click something in his brain saying, hold on a minute. Is this the 1916 rising? But Africa has no backbone. Why I've made this page is because I'm trying to send a message of what that guy has just articulated right there. That is Africa's problem. You just simply by being white. What is that post-traumatic slave syndrome? That is why Africa is not come out of the place it's out. It's not corruption. It's not everything. If we could eradicate that from the African society, I'm telling you, if we had a society that thought like that young boy, the West would have nowhere to hide to do their corruption. But the problem with post-traumatic slave syndrome is that from the grassroots right till the very top, we are, to your everyday person, to people who have power, we are filled with people that when it comes time to look the oppressor in the face and say, you so-and-so, we buckle at the knees. And I'm telling you now because I do Pan-Africanism. White rejection, here and back home, is something that is in the DNA of the African, and he cannot deal with it yet. He cannot deal with it. Let me tell you this. Let me tell you the difference. Rejection to the Chinaman, couldn't care less. And I'm going to end on this. Putin, obviously he is a white man. He goes in the interview. I remember watching the Christopher Tucker interview and thinking to myself, wait, Putin doesn't speak English by now? Of course he does. He says, you are going to speak my language. And translate it. Yet in the African parliament, we still speak the very people who oppressed us, their language. Guys, when you dive into the psychology of the African, it's got nothing to do with degrees. It's got nothing to do with degrees. Psychologically, we have not removed him as our master. Every time an opportunity is going to come for a black person in any place, high place, we have not yet engraved in the African a fight or flight. That I fight here. I fight here. I fight for being African. I'm telling you, even in something as small as friend groups, I can tell. I've been doing this now for 3 years. I can tell we are not ready to overthrow the white man. Majority of us are not ready for that. But guess what? It's not hard for us to fight each other. We love fighting each other. You know this. You know the beef we have amongst ourselves. Not hard for us. You know it is. So if it was really our African leaders, we'd have no problem. We have no problem accusing our African leaders. We'd have absolutely no problem. I want anybody who's watched this episode today to understand that genocide stops with that mentality at the beginning. When us as a people, diaspora, nationwide, are fed up that no matter how much distractions are pointed, what about this, what about that, what about this, like that girl who came to me, I told you, what about this, and say, I'm talking to you. Get out. I'll deal with that lousy man tomorrow, the one that you have a gun to his head, by the way. Get out. What about get out? What about get out? What about get out? And it's going to have to be a consistent mentality from Africans worldwide. We are too compromised. You're thinking about your white friend group. You're thinking about your white friend. You don't want to have a radical mentality. I wish I could explain it all, but that's all I have time for. This is how genocide still happen. This is how Apple still takes. This is how wars still happen. This is how everything still happen. Do you think, and I'll leave you with this question, that the perpetrator would have anywhere to hide if a country of Africans thought like this? He would have nowhere to hide. He has plenty of places to hide because the African will be quicker to blow out the brains of his fellow African than to investigate and to accuse and to pursue. And it's a mentality, brothers and sisters. It is a mentality. If you yourself know you walk on thin ice and you tread on a fine line and you watch yourself. That's what I've learned. This revolution is going to start with you in the mirror, assessing your relationships with white people, assessing your fear of the white man. We all inherited that fear. And we have to pass on and impart in our children a rebellion against the fear, not just a getting on with it. A complete contrast to that. Look at Erik Prince, what he said. Look what the other white man saw. Stop looking at the things that are not important. Even white people have understood. These people think we are God still. That's from the leader to the very down person. I'm telling you because I understand this. Black people will not even start our own revolution because of the consequences that may have with right relationships. It's one thing trying to hold on to your visa in quote unquote someone else's country. We've taken it further than that. We are in a state of worship. We are still in a state of worship. A revolution will happen when Africans are not so afraid of their master. Thank you for watching. I gotta go. Thank you.
And I'm on a mission for you.